to India and Ireland, round Africa and back again. We don't really need to know just where we'll go. Maybe Canada, then to Brazil, then through the Alpine foothills. All I really want to know is, can we go? Oh baby, can we go? Round and around the globe.
Welcome to Take Me With You, episode 61. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Cheryl. We are two well-traveled people who want to go everywhere.
But that's not going to happen. So instead, we'll travel vicariously by inviting a guest to share their unique travel stories with us.
This holiday season, we're going to take a little break from having on guests to do a couple mini-sodes. And today's theme is about travel goals.
Travel goals? Why on earth would we be talking about travel goals, Cheryl?
Because it's the new year.
Well, it's almost the new year.
It's almost the new year. I know. I mean, everyone's just amping up with all their New Year's plans, you know. Big
Yep.
New Year's parties midweek.
All those New Year's midweek parties.
This New Year's and Christmas is about the worst timing because it's like I get off New Year's Day and Christmas Day, and so it's just like, cool.
Oh,
I have a
right in the middle of
Wednesday
the
off.
week.
Yeah. So, but amongst that, you know, a lot of people like to set New Year's resolutions and think about their goals and how their last year went. And so we thought it would be cool if we talked about some travel goals kind of in light of that.
I think first, though, Cheryl, I have a really important question to ask you.
Yes.
Do you set New Year's resolutions? Are you a resolution creating person?
I'm not a New Year's resolution person. I've had times when I've made a resolution or set some goals, but New Year's isn't really meaningful to me. So it typically doesn't happen around New Year's. It might happen around like a transition in life or maybe like for 1 month or something like that. Or sometimes birthday or, you know, just whenever I have a time that's kind of more of a time of reflection for myself.
Yeah.
But New Year's isn't really a time for me when anything is changing or looking new.
Right.
And so that's not really significant for me. How about you?
Yeah, I'm similar. I also am not a New Year's resolution type person. I think similar to what you were saying, Cheryl, New Year's isn't a time that is significant for me, especially since I'm a teacher. I often think of years as school years, not calendar years. So it's in the middle of the year, and at least at the high school level here in Washington State where I'm at, it's not even a transition in between quarters or semesters. So it's just a break of 2 weeks, and then we just pick right back up where we were before. So it's not significant in that sense. So I've actually had that happen even within the last couple of weeks where I've been talking to people about, oh, you mean, it's going to do such and such. I don't remember what it was, but this year. And they're like, no, next year in 2020. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's what I meant, because to me, it's all 1 year.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So we should talk about goal setting before we
Okay.
talk about specific ones. So you're a teacher, so you
I
seem like
am a
someone
teacher.
who might know about goals.
Well, sure. I think that there are a lot of different structures or strategies to coming up with really good goals. One that I'm the most familiar with, and I'm sure some of our listeners have heard before, and maybe you have a different structure that works for you, but the one that I've heard and I know the most is setting what's called a SMART goal. And SMART is an acronym, and it stands for making sure that whatever goal you're setting, it's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound.
Okay.
So, for example, a goal that people might have that's related to travel, since, travel podcast and all, would be, I want to travel more.
Oh, yeah. I hear that all the time.
Right. And I think you and I probably say that a fair amount.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
Right. But that's not necessarily a useful goal because it doesn't meet a lot of those SMART criteria. So, for example, it's not specific. So travel more. What does that mean? Travel, as we've learned on this podcast over the last year plus, it means different things. Is that a weekend getaway? Is that going to another country? Is that going to another continent? What does that mean if you want to travel? If you want to do it more than what? More than what you're already doing? More than what you've done in the past? More than what somebody else you know is doing? A lot of those things are really, really fuzzy. So it's more likely you're not going to achieve the goal because it's unclear what that's going to look like for you to achieve the goal.
Well, and if you're like us and we want to go everywhere, that's probably not a very good travel goal because until we've gone everywhere, we're going to feel like we're failing.
Exactly. Right. Right. Well, and then that gets to the M, right? Measurable. How do you know that you can do that? Travel more or go everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you can measure that, but is everywhere every country? Is everywhere every continent? Is everywhere that you've gone to every ocean? Is it, I was just talking to some family and kind of like some of your family. I have a relative who has, I think, one worldwide Disney park that he has not been to yet, but he's been to every other one. And so that's an everywhere, but that's everywhere, every Disney park. That's very different than every country or every continent, right?
Yeah. Okay. So that's measurable.
Yep.
And then you said the next one is attainable.
Attainable. Yeah. So going everywhere, not attainable, Cheryl. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no.
I know.
You just ruined the podcast. Oh, wait, no.
Well,
Every week you say, but that's not going to happen. Okay, never mind.
I do.
We're
That's
good.
kind of my role, is to shoot everything down.
Thank you, Eeyore.
You're welcome. But we can still want that.
Yeah.
You can still want to go everywhere. That just doesn't necessarily mean you're going to achieve that particular goal. Right.
Yeah.
And then relevant, I think that one is a lot easier when it comes to travel because it has to be something that matters to you. If in my job, and I'm sure in a lot of other jobs, there are goals that I'm required to set that I really don't care about. And I'm not invested in it. It's not relevant to me. So I can set the goal, but I'm not going to work very hard to achieve it because I don't care. It's somebody else's goal that's been imposed on me.
Yeah.
Right.
And then why is time bound important?
So time bound is important for a couple of reasons. One, because it gives you a deadline. And at least here in our American culture, we tend to be pretty good at procrastinating. Of course, there's exceptions to that. And there are some people who are really good about just getting things done. But I think as a whole, we tend to put things off until we absolutely have to do them. And so to give yourself a time limit. So if you want to go to one new country that you've never been to during 2019 or 2020, sorry, 2019 is this year. You don't have a lot of time if you're going to set that goal for 2019. And say you want to do it in the year 2020 or in the next 5 years, you would like to have eaten 15 new foods. Or by the time you turn, for me, by the time I turn 40, I want to have done X, Y, or Z. Like something where there's an actual deadline. And again, it goes back to the measurable. So you know whether or not you achieved that goal during that time.
Yeah. Cool. So I like these. I've also heard that a way to help achieve goals is to write them down.
Yeah.
I've heard that you're way more likely to achieve it if you've written it down. For me, my version of that might be to tell someone.
And have someone keep you accountable.
Yeah, well, and I think it just becomes more real when I say it out loud. And so I think that helps me with that too.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this whole travel more goal. let's break this one down a little bit more, because I would imagine we have a lot of listeners who do want to travel more. And
Yeah.
so let's help them out.
Let's do it. Well, I don't think we necessarily want to set what the specific components of this goal are for them. That's something that I think y'all are going to have to decide for yourself. What's your time frame look like? Where is it that you want to go? More than what all those things that we said. But I think regardless of how you set the parameters around those, there are some common things that are related to travel that can help you actually achieve the goal. And one of them that I think we talked about during our minisodes a little bit over the summer this year in 2019, is creating a budget.
Oh, my favorite thing.
Said very few people.
I mean, I do like it because it does help me travel more. So
Yeah. So what does a travel budget look like for you, Cheryl?
For myself, I have a regular habit of setting aside money every month. And then if I have a trip coming up, I will look at how far away the trip is and how much I think it's going to cost. And then I'll figure out how many months I have and how much I need to save per month to have enough for the trip.
That seems very sensible and down to earth.
What does it look like for you? Is that a similar process?
You know, it's a little bit different for me just because of the way I tend to not spend money in general anyway. And so and I don't do a lot. I travel a lot, but I don't travel a lot for vacation for myself. A lot, like I've mentioned before, a lot of my travel is with students in one form or another. And so the budgeting for that is very different than doing a vacation, like the trip to Ireland that I did with my friends Serena and Tom this last summer. So for that one in particular, I did very similarly to what you said. And I was like, okay, we think it's going to be about this much money. So I need to be setting aside that much. I need to have that much money by this certain date to make sure that I've got everything. And I'm the type of person, I really don't like to use credit to pay for things unless I already have the cash and know that I'm going to for sure pay it off at the end of the month. So that's a strategy I use to actually pay for. Don't buy it unless I can pay for it. If that makes sense.
That's a good strategy.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think also along with budget, there is an aspect of maybe reconsidering expectations of how much money needs to be spent on different trips.
Yeah.
Maybe it's reconsidering what accommodations you stay in, or how flexible you're going to be on the time of year that you go, or on the transportation getting there, or how many meals you're eating out or tours you're doing.
Yep. I think the other
while
thing
you're
that you
there.
can do, if you aren't willing to sacrifice the cost of those things, you can wait longer. You can save for longer. If you're like, no, I really want this level of hotel all the time, or to eat out this much, or have this personal standard when I travel, you just may have to wait longer in between your trips if you want to afford it. Something that this is not 100% true for 100% of people across 100% of the world, but for a lot of people, if you're middle class or upper class in the United States, which again is not everybody, but if you are, when it comes to travel, for the most part, you can afford it if it's important enough to you and you're willing to both sacrifice other things and save long enough to make it happen.
Yeah. I think that's true.
You know?
Yeah, so I guess a good question to ask is like, what will make this trip enjoyable for me, and is it still worth it if I spend less money while I'm on the trip?
Yeah.
You know, and that can help to figure out how much you want to spend on that trip.
Yeah. Or the other flip side would be, what is more important to you? The day-to-day things like eating out, going getting drinks, coffee every morning, whatever those things are that you tend to do that are not necessity, but that you enjoy and are a part of your everyday life that makes you feel happy or that you just enjoy for whatever reason. And if you gave those things up to save for the travel, would that be worth it to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for some people, I think the answer is yes. And some people, the answer is no. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer. It's just you need to know for yourself what is more important to you.
Yeah, that's true. So then I think another thing to think about with the goal of traveling more, obviously being more specific with what that looks like to you, is for me, a way I accomplish my goals is planning.
But Cheryl, you don't like to plan.
Yeah, I am such a big planner. I mean, I also am an event planner by profession. But I think when it comes to my personal life, it's kind of the same thing as you were saying. Like, I think how you spend your money kind of shows your priorities. I think how you spend your time also shows those priorities. Yeah. And so for me, when something's important to me, I can make time for it. And when it comes to travel, that really does look like planning. And so even like this summer, my fiance and I decided that we wanted to go camping several times. And so I looked at our summer calendar and found several weekends when we could do it and didn't make other plans on those weekends and made sure that we had time to pack before those camping trips and just made it a priority. And so it was like, because I think it'd be way too easy to get to the end of the summer and be like, oh, we didn't go camping, and just kind of feel like it's something that happened to you as opposed to making the active choice to plan for those little trips.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that also looks like vacation days at work, being really intentional with them. And, most of us probably have jobs where we have pretty limited. We can't just take off whenever we want. And so not taking days here and there, but saving them up like a budget kind of like saving up money is saving up vacation days and planning a time when you have enough time to travel away from work to do the cooler trips that you want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like what you said as far as, where you spend your time and your money reflects your priorities. And I think part of the reason why that's true is because both of those are limited resources. You only have so much time and you only have so much money. And so you have to decide where you want to do those. And yeah, you're right. It's if it's important enough, you'll make it happen. But I like that you're extending that even to time off work. All of those things, we have a limited amount of these things to spend. And so just being intentional and deciding what that means. And maybe that is travel. Maybe it's not travel.
Yeah. It might be just spending more time at home or with family or...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. It's not that travel is the end all be all and all must travel in order to enjoy life.
Yeah.
You and I happen to enjoy travel a lot.
I think it's just more I've heard so many people say oh, I wish I traveled more. And it kind of feels like something that's just by accident they haven't. And so I think that's where we're coming in and saying well, how could you change that if you wanted to change that for yourself? Yeah.
I think another thing, and you alluded to it just a moment ago, but sometimes that might even involve redefining what travel looks like for you. Maybe it is hard because you've got young kids or work is really demanding or budget is really tight or whatever it is. Travel doesn't have to look like going halfway across the earth. So it could be that maybe you want to travel more. Maybe you explore the nearby relatively local areas around you. You do day trips, you do an overnight trip, you do weekend trips. There's a lot of stuff around a lot of places that, I mean, depending on where you live, obviously is going to depend on how much. I know here in the Seattle area, which is where you and I both live, within, I would say, a 2 to 3 hour drive radius, there's tons of stuff
Yeah.
to go or see or do, or even if it's not this huge big tourist thing, even just like taking the ferry out to Bainbridge Island and spending time and coming back. And, there's things that you can do that don't have to be super expensive and don't have to be time intensive, but they can still be travel related if that's something that you are wanting to do more of.
Absolutely. I think there are so many fun ways to be a tourist in your own city, or to consider what are some day trips around you that I think for me, when I do those things, just make life feel so much more full and make me miss travel a lot less when I'm going and exploring my nearby area. I think a piece of caution I have with this is that so I love a good little like weekend local getaway where you just drive somewhere, I think that sometimes those can add up quicker than you think if you're getting accommodations somewhere. And so I think for me currently, my favorite is just a day trip because then you're not paying to stay anywhere else. Although it's so fun to go stay somewhere that's just like an hour away and have a fun little weekend. I think you have to think about like, is that money taking away from the big trip that I wish I could be taking, And so like, I don't know, still being intentional with money with those, I think is really good.
Yeah. Yep, that's a great point. I think that's sort of a theme. I'm hearing themes come out of what we're saying, and I think being intentional is one of those themes. And sometimes I think it's even, and this is true, I think of goal setting in life in general, but here in the context of travel, just sitting down and spending time thinking or maybe talking with somebody else or journaling or writing or whatever it is that helps you process information and trying to decide, what is it that is important to you about travel? What are the things that you want to be doing, and what does that look like? And maybe you're early enough in travel that you don't know what that looks like yet. So maybe 2020 is about trying some different things.
Yeah.
Trying a day trip, trying an overnight trip, trying a weekend trip, trying one trip that's out of the state, whatever it happens to be, trying a few different things to just see, what do you like as a traveler?
Yeah. I like that. So I think that we should give some ideas about travel goals that people could have.
Okay. Travel more. Why are you laughing, Cheryl?
So proud. Good job.
Thank
Nailed
you.
that one.
Yep.
So
I'm good.
Yeah, so I think to me, one thing about you, Ryan, that I find interesting when it comes to travel goals is that you have figured out the things you don't care about with travel, and you've really honed in what you do care about. And so you've learned, like, I want to do science trips and I want to see all these cool, interesting science things all over the world. And I don't care as much about the history or the art, and so that you've kind of been able to narrow. And then I'm guessing that that's really helped you with your travel goals. Because then it's easy to figure out, like, well, where are the coolest science things, or where are the things that I feel like I could skip? And everyone kind of has their own interests. And so I think as you're talking about figuring out what about travel is even interesting to you and what you want with it, is I think it just starting to think about your interests and, like, what would make good travel goals around what you even like about travel in the first place. And some people are about checking a lot of things off a list. So, like, for me, I really want to go to all 7 continents. I maybe want to go to all 50 states. That's, like, not as much of a high priority, but that could be cool. And I'm at, like, 30 something. So it's like,
you're over halfway there.
Yeah, like, I could make it happen. I'm not so sure, though. I think I would like to go to all the regions of Spain. I think I'm halfway
I can see
there.
that you would want to do that for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, we found some lists online that other people had of ideas when it comes to traveling more or having travel goals.
Yeah.
So, like one is get to at least one new country.
Like for a new year.
Yeah. See an aurora event.
Oh, that should definitely be on people's list because it's amazing.
Try one food I've never tried before.
That sounds like a Cheryl goal.
Yeah. Well, and what's fun about that is I think that would be a fun way to experience travel in your own city, even is just like experiencing the local food more where you're at. You know? Head out of town for more long weekends. We were talking about that. Let's see. Do something meaningful while traveling.
Yeah, I think that's a growing thing that we're seeing more and more of, traveling for and doing service projects or, just helping out in an area that you're traveling to. And I think that can be something that can be really meaningful. It's not for everybody. That's not why everybody travels. Some people want to travel to just get away from concerns and be able to relax. And I think that's totally fine. But I think that, being able to do something that feels like you're adding value to the world, to others' lives, things like that. I think that can be a way of making travel even more rewarding.
Learn to scuba dive is another one on here. Although I would say even like if learning is something that's interesting to someone, then maybe what are things that you would like to learn while traveling somewhere and how could you make that possible? Visit a truly epic library.
Oof, there's some
swim
amazing
under a
libraries out of
waterfall, do a big hike. I mean, there's just like a lot of fun ideas. So I think like I would just encourage like any individual then just to think about like, well, what are things that like to them would be a really, good goal. Are they nature goals? Are they city goals? There's all sorts of different things.
Ooh, hey, Cheryl.
Yes.
You could make a Google Keep list of travel goals where you have different categories and you nest the types of goals underneath each of those categories.
Ooh, Google Keep for the win. My goal is just going to be to make a Google Keep travel list. Oh man. What are some of your travel goals?
I don't know that I have big, huge, wild travel goals per se. There are some things that I would like to see and do, but since a lot of what I'm doing again is with student travel, it's oftentimes looking at where are places to take students that have cool sciencey things. And well, one of the places I would like to go back to is I would really like to go back to London. It's been 15 years since I was there, and I loved London, and I would love to go back to London. And then I'd actually like to do the south part of England. And then, of course, I'd also like to go to Scotland because I've never been to Scotland. See, this is my problem, is I start with one place, and then I was like, well, then I'd also like to do this, and then I'd also like to do this. Well, if I'm already there, I might as well do that, and then there you go. So,
Oh man.
Big picture travel goal, I would love to do New Zealand, but that's a long term. That's not going to happen all that soon because that's going to be a lot more expensive trip. So I would need to budget for that for a whole lot longer. There's a lot of pieces that would go into something like that. So I think I tend to not necessarily have big, huge, lofty, giant travel goals because to me, that always feels unrealistic. It's much more, what are the more relatively short term, within the next year or two, what are things that I would like to do? And then there's a few things that sit out there, like New Zealand's out there, Antarctica is out there, things that during my life, we talked about time bound, right? Those ones are my broader ones. At some point in my life, I would like to do those. because they're very broad like that, that means they're not likely to happen anytime soon. But I know that. You know, that's not something where I was like, yes, this is a goal I'm trying to have happen soon. This is yes, there will be a time where I'm going to try and make this happen. That time is not right now because both of those places have a huge time investment to get there.
Yeah.
Because they're very far away.
Well, and so I think that gets to bucket lists.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's that lifelong goal, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is kind of like for me, I don't know if I like to have a lot of travel goals that are in one annual calendar. I think it's more like in the next few years, you know, or like for me, because I will make travel happen for myself, it's more like what's my next big trip? Knowing that I will have a next big trip soon.
Yeah.
What's it going to be?
But it sounds like you make that decision one at a time. You don't have a list of, here are my 6 next big trips in order. I'm going to do this one the next year and then this one the year after that. But you do a trip, and then after that trip, then you decide what your next big trip is going to be. Is that accurate?
Yeah, typically. I think I have some places on my radar that are higher priorities than others.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's like a couple ideas floating around my head usually.
Yeah.
And I think like we were talking about like figuring out what matters to you or what your priorities are, things like that. And I think that can help some people like whittle down where they want to go or what they want to focus on if they're feeling overwhelmed. I think one thing for me though is that I truly would love to go everywhere. And so part of how I might decide sometimes is if there's somebody in my life and they really want to go to somewhere, I'm like, cool, I'll go there, you know? And so I think that's part of it is like opportunity, you know? And so just kind of trying to seize those opportunities or see like if you're going to travel with someone, what do they care about? But yeah, I think a lot of it though is just another big theme like we've been talking about other than being specific and intentional is just not having excuses, you know, and I guess that'd be true for any goal. But when it comes to travel goals, I think that we can always have reasons that we're not going to travel. And then ultimately it's like, well, I think you can get creative and you can make it work. So whether it's because you have kids or a limited budget or limited time or you don't have anyone to go with or anything, like there are ways that you can still travel with those different parameters.
Right. Yeah, and I think if you're in a place where you feel like there's always a reason you can't do whatever the thing is, I think that to me that's a signal that maybe it's not as big of a priority as you think it is. And again, that's not necessarily bad.
Yeah.
It may just be having a more accurate view of what things are really important to you. But if you sit down and you look at that and you say, no, but I want whatever that other thing is. In this case, we're using travel as the example, but this could apply to any other area too. Like, no, I really want this thing to be more important. Then what changes do you need to make? Kind of thinking about budget, but probably bigger than that, in order to make that happen if it really is something that you want to be important to you.
Yep. Cool. I think that's a good conclusion.
You can do anything you set your mind to.
Yeah, that's exactly what we said.
Just follow your heart.
Oh, follow your heart. It will never steer you wrong.
No, never.
Just
no one has
believe in yourself.
ever gone the wrong direction because they went with their emotions.
I'm glad you
Never.
understand that.
Yep, I do. All right. Well, hopefully this was helpful for people in setting some goals and thinking about travel. Why don't we go ahead and do some Wish You Were Here, Cheryl? You want to do a Wish You Were Here?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So Wish You Were Here is a segment where we're going to highlight a travel attraction. This is our last Wish You Were Here for 2019.
Aww.
I know. Last one. So you and I are each going to highlight a travel attraction, kind of like those old postcards that have a little snapshot of some place. And it would say, wish you were here. So Cheryl, what's the cool thing you want to share for your Wish You Were Here?
So mine is kind of in light of, first of all, it's winter time. We're kind of cold right now. And in the winter, I'm always just wishing for warmth. And also, this was a trip I took on a very small budget. So I thought it was fitting. And that is Diamond Head in Oahu, Hawaii.
Okay.
Diamond Head is I did it as it's a hike. It's a volcanic cone.
Ooh, now I'm
so
interested.
it's not like doing anything now.
Still.
But it's very cool because you're on the island of Oahu and you just look over and you're like, oh, that's a big mountain thing, but it's a big volcano. But it's a cone, so it has like a ridge around it. I'm not great with the different types of volcanoes necessarily.
It's a shield
so I don't
volcano.
know. Yes, but it's covered in green. It's really pretty, and it's a really good hike. And when you get to the top, you can just look all over the whole island and the ocean, and it's gorgeous. But I hiked it when I was in college, and I went to Oahu with some friends of mine. We had a few extra days off of school, and we found super cheap tickets, and we stayed in a pretty inexpensive hotel, and we did not rent a car. We just took the bus everywhere, and we mainly just did free activities. And so one of the things we did was we took the bus from like the main area of Waikiki over to the base of Diamond Head and then hiked it. And it was a great day. So I would say if you're on the island of Oahu near the Waikiki area, you should go hike Diamond Head.
How long of a hike is it?
It was several hours. I was not into hiking at the time, so I remember feeling like it was pretty long, but honestly, it was probably like a half day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. The elevation is 761, so that's not very much elevation.
That's not. That sounds like a lot to me.
Oh.
761.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was thinking 7,000. I was like, that sounds like a lot to me. No, 700. Got it.
No, 761. Yeah.
Okay.
How about you, Ryan?
So I'm going to share about the Chester Beatty Library in Dublin, Ireland. So it's a library. You had mentioned that there's cool libraries in a lot of places, and there are. This is a little bit different. This is kind of more museum-y than library-y, but it's all books and manuscripts types of things. So I think that's why it's called a library. But there's some cool stuff there. They've got some really, really old manuscripts. There's a book that it's huge. Like one page, I'm trying to see size-wise if I can see in some of my pictures. One page is as tall as I think my forearm. Like all the way from like elbow to fingertips, maybe even bigger than that, I think. And that's one side, and then the whole book opens, and it's several hundred pages. And it has some of those, I think they're called illuminated manuscripts, where they've got kind of like the Book of Kells, where things are drawn pretty like, you know, the old school Disney storybooks that they would open, and they would have stuff like that. So it has some of that stuff. They have some, I think they're Buddhist manuscripts, which are really interesting. One, just because, you know, they use a different alphabet, which is really cool to look, and it's has lots of curves in the scripts and things like that. That's really cool. But the books also open kind of accordion style. So it's kind of like a scroll, except instead of rolling, they're folded back and forth, back and forth, back and forth in this long rectangle. It was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool. So, and they've got some really old manuscripts. They've got different sections from both the Hebrew and the Christian Bible, like original, I mean, not original, but from let's see, I'm looking at some of these dates here, 200 AD. So thousands of years old, some of these manuscripts. Yeah, it's really cool. It's a cool library, and it's free. I'm remembering it being free. I'm pretty sure it's free. And there's a really cool garden outside too. So even if you're not so much into the books, if someone you're with is, there's a beautiful garden that's kind of around it, and there's a castle nearby. So all of those things all together.
Oh my gosh. There's
right?
a lot of
castle,
features
garden,
right
old books.
Something for the whole family.
Exactly. Okay. I think we're done, Cheryl. What do you think?
I think we're done.
Yeah.
Go set some goals.
Go set some goals. And celebrate the new year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah. Happy New Year. Okay. One goal that you could set.
What's that?
You could follow our podcast on social media.
I never thought you were going to say that.
Surprise. We are at Timwe Podcast on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And if you are not already following us, that's a super easy goal to set and accomplish right away. You could do it in the next 5 minutes, and that could be done. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Man, what a way to hit a New Year's resolution.
Exactly. Exactly.
You can also email us at timwepodcast@gmail.com. We want to hear what is on your travel bucket list. I'm always interested to hear what other people have as their like big bucket list items, because it's so varied, and I don't know, I get a lot of good ideas from those bucket lists. So send us your bucket list.
Absolutely. You can also call us and leave us a voicemail at 406-763-8699, or another way to remember that is 406-POD Timwe, and we would love for you to leave us a voicemail or send us a text message about what travel goals you have set. Maybe it's for 2020, maybe it's by the time you reach a certain age, maybe it's for the next month, who knows? But I'd love to hear more about your travel goals, because Cheryl and I might steal them for ourselves.
Yep, we probably will.
We probably will. Please go ahead and rate and review us on whatever you're using to listen to this podcast. Please share about this episode on social media so more people can hear about our podcast. And be sure to subscribe to make sure you do not miss any of our new episodes. As a matter of fact, there's another thing. You could set a goal for yourself to subscribe to our podcast, and you could accomplish that pretty darn quickly.
As always, thank you to Beth Reed Miller for our awesome artwork. You can check out more of Beth's artwork at Beth Is Something. And thank you to Erica Corbin for the use of her song Round the Globe. You can listen to Erica's music wherever music is sold or streamed.
That is going to wrap up 2019 for our podcast. I know, coming to a close, but we are excited for what 2020 is going to bring. So until next time, remember to take me with you.
Take me with you.
Can we get a sailboat chasing down the sunset as we float round and round the globe? Salty air and balmy nights, guided only by the lights above, and a little love. Oh, the world is out there waiting to explore, and all our troubles here want them to be